There was a certain chassid of the Alter Rebbe that got offered a position to be the rabbi of a certain town. He was very much considering it. He was a big lamdan, a very great Torah scholar, very wise, and really well respected. So he went to his Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, to ask him if this was something he should do. And the Alter Rebbe responded very strangely that it would be better for you to be a wagon driver. The chassid left completely confused. He had spent all his days learning. He was a rabbi in his own right, and now he had been offered a great position, and yet his Rebbe tells him to go and be a wagon driver. Nevertheless, he would not question his Rebbe. So immediately he went to where all the wagon drivers gathered together, and he asked them that they start teaching him a bit about the trade. They said, "You, Rebbe, you're such a lamdan. Why you want to be one of us?" Nevertheless, one of them took him under his wing and started teaching him. Word got around town. By the time he got home, his wife was pacing back and forth. He says, "What's the matter?" She says, "What do you mean, what's the matter? Everyone's been telling me that you've gone and you've lost your mind, that you're thinking of being a wagon driver." He said, "Listen, I went to the Rebbe about this new position to be Rebbe of a town, and he told me it would be better that I be a wagon driver." She says, "If that's the case, here." She takes off her earrings, she gives it to him. "Sell off these earrings, go get a wagon, and start your new profession." And that's exactly what he did. He learned the ins and outs of how to be a wagon driver, and he started doing that. Years went by, and at one point, he was waiting at an inn for potential business, just like the taxis line up in front of the hotels nowadays. The wagons were there waiting, and a businessman, a Jew, came up to him, and he said, "Tomorrow morning I need to go to a faraway town. Would you take me?" He says, "Of course, this is the fee that I would ask of you." The businessman said, "Very well." He says, "What time can we leave in the morning?" So this chassid says to him, "We can leave it around 8 a.m. You know, I got to get up and I got to daven, and I take my time when I daven, and after I finish davening, praying, then we can go." The businessman, even though he was a Jew, wasn't an observant Jew, and he says, "Nope, that won't do. I want to leave first thing in the morning." The chassid said, "I'm sorry, well then you can find yourself a different wagon driver. I'm simply not going to bend when it comes to this." So the businessman says, "Wow, fine, your loss. I'll go find someone else." That night, when the chassid retired to his room late at night, he by mistake left the door slightly cracked. And around midnight, he arose to do what's called tikkun chatzot, the midnight lament, mourning the destruction of the temple. And he really poured his heart out in his prayers. And it just so happened to be the case that this businessman was going up to his room, which was on the same floor, and he happened to pass by the cracked door, the room where the chassid was davening, and he was so taken aback by the emotion and the passion and the intensity of the prayers and the sobbing that he heard coming from the room of the chassid, that it shook him all night long. He could not sleep. Come the next morning, the businessman arose at 5 a.m. and went to the man that he had taken to be his wagon driver in place of the chassid and says, "You can find new business. I've decided I'm going to wait until 8 a.m. I'm going to go with that chassid." Around 8 a.m., chassid makes his way down, and there he sees the businessman. The businessman says, "Listen, I've decided I want you to take me. You ready to go?" He says, "Sure, let's go." As he's riding the wagon with the businessman in the back, he says, "By the way, what made you change your mind? Why you were very adamant that you wanted to leave at 5 a.m.? So the businessman told him the truth. He says, "You know, last night I was passing by your room and I heard you praying, and it really struck me. You see, I wasn't always non-observant. I grew up in a religious home, and you reminded me of my father and the way he would pray and the intensity, and it sent me all the way back to my childhood and all those fond memories of the warmth of Judaism." And for the rest of the car ride, the two spoke to each other about deep matters in a loving manner, and they became friends. And this friendship actually continued even long after they had gotten to the arrival destination. And eventually, this businessman was inspired to himself return in tshuva, return to the path of Torah and mitzvot. One day, the Chassid, who was now a wagon driver, happened to be in the town where his Rebbe was. The Alter Rebbe, who had told him to become a wagon driver, was no longer around. He had passed away. But his son had taken over, the new Rebbe. And he figured he would go and see the new Rebbe. As he came in to meet with the Rebbe said, I should tell you that last night my predecessor, the Alter Rebbe, visited me in my dream, and he explained to me that the reason he told you not to take that job as a rabbi and instead to become a wagon driver was because he foresaw that you would meet this one Jew and be able to inspire this one Jew to return to the fold. Now that you've done that, though, there's no longer a need for you to be a wagon driver. He says that you should go and accept that post as the rabbi of that town. Hashem guides us place to place, but one thing remains eternal. One thing remains the same no matter where we may be, no matter what time period it may be. We are shluchim, we are emissaries for the Creator in this world in order to get every creature, every creation to return and to connect to its Creator.